Okay, we are live.
Whoop whoop.
I see Hallow One is with us, but let's see. Can you hear us, Hallow One? We can't see your video.
Hi there, everybody who's not watching and not joined us at the moment, but will be joining us very shortly. This is Esoteric Hours. My name is Bradley Powers. I'm a mystic. I have seen the most amazing of things. My life has been freaking amazeballs. I'd like to add my co-host to this conversation, Jim Andre, psychic healer and alien abductee.
How you doing, everybody?
And special guest Tiffany Reynolds from Tiffany's Tarot. Tiffany does broadcast a show every week on a Saturday called Tiffany's Tarot, and she presents tarot card readings free of charge to the public. Very kind of you to do this, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
Okay, we also have Hallow One here, Tiffany's friend, but his video is frozen at the moment. I'm not sure that he can hear us or that we can hear him.
His name is Brennis, but he has his own band known as Hollow One, based on his interest of vampires. So that's why he has that name.
Well, he's having a problem with his video. Maybe he's got to, I don't know if he can hear us. Try to go into your microphone and video settings on here, which would be the 3 dots beside the microphone, and make sure you're hooked up with the right camera and microphone.
He's using it from his phone, like mine.
Well, he must have a poor connection or signal or something.
Woo! So, yeah. Unfortunately, we can't hear Hello One, and which was a shame because we are going to be talking about vampires and the Fae, and who knows more professional to share about this metaphorical phenomena. Hello One, hi there.
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
At random.
We thought we could.
Yes, and Fae, Tiffany, are you familiar with vampires and the Fae?
Yes, I am.
Very familiar. And yes, so vampires and the Fae, are they real? Well, over to Tiffany. First of all, Jim, I'd like to hear Jim before Tiffany actually shares what she knows, which is quite a wide, vast, diverse variety of knowledge.
Well,
what do you know about the Fae?
Well, I'd like to know if Tiffany was ever bitten by a vampire.
No, but a lot of people think I am a vampire. So.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask that next, but my first question was, have you ever been bitten by one?
No.
No. Have you ever bitten anyone else as a vampire? Well, in your case, you would be considered a vampiress, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had the urge to bite someone as a vampiress? No.
No. No. But I do know that a lot of people do have chronic illnesses that can be linked to vampirism, and there's still a lot today that there's still no cures for some of these illnesses. But I know that some of the illnesses that they still can't explain do cause people to crave blood, and the people often turn to blood drinking as a way to them getting iron and other things.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, from what I understand, that goes on today in this modern day and age, and they call it adrenochrome. where
Yes, they have that, and you also have actual vampire cults around the United States. They call themselves, uh, well, they have different names, but they have clubs, raids, etc., where people, you have the vampire and you have the people that come in freely. They do test their blood and everything before they sample from the person. That is a real thing, and a lot of people don't know about it. But yeah, you do
so
have that still going on.
so in essence, what
And
are they? So in essence, how do they do that within these clubs? Do they like draw each other's blood and drink it, or how does that work?
well, I live here in San Antonio, but I know in Austin they have the one called the Vampire Coffin, and they also have a vampire cult up there. It's owned by a vampire couple. They have their own club. The people with the wristbands, you'll see people going into their club. It's like a masquerade ball.
Watch me. See what I
Crazy.
want to do.
Yeah, so they all have the wristband, and the people that have the wristband are the people that want their blood to be taken and fed upon. You get to actually meet with the vampires, and they discuss, what you feel comfortable, what you don't feel comfortable. I believe some of them they take from the shoulder blades, probably on the arm, but nowhere near major arteries or anything. So that is something that, again, a lot of people don't know, but yeah, that's something that's real.
Well, what I often wonder is, do
And I've
they
never been
actually?
to Transylvania.
Yeah, Steve is asking, have you ever been to Transylvania?
No, I have not. That sounds lovely, though. I would love to
You
go.
ever been to Transylvania?
No,
I
I've
can hear
never
you
been to
now,
Transylvania.
but you froze up again. So I mean, these vampire cults, Tiffany. What are they? How do they draw the blood? Do they actually bite each other, or do they just?
So some of the people they get a small razor, small sharp edge. They use it in medical facilities. Some of them they buy it at discount rates. And they use this small little. It's like a little needle slash like a mini knife or something. It
Uh,
punctures the skin, but not too deep, and it's enough to at least get their fill of blood. So, but
so
you
so
have,
they so that would be just enough for a taste, though. I would think. I mean, if they actually
yeah,
wanted to drink some, they would have to. They would
go
have to.
furthermore,
Right.
whatever the person is comfortable with. Now, the people that actually drink the blood are known as Seng vampires, Sengain, which means blood in Spanish. But then you also have psychic vampires, and I think a lot of the people with vampire culture tend to get these two confused. A psychic vampire is someone that feeds off energy, and unlike a sane vampire, they do not need for blood.
So in
So
other words, a psychic vampire is just energy, and a regular vampire is blood.
yes,
Do they have
there is
any
a big difference.
vampires? Do they have any vampires with the desire for both energy and blood?
Sometimes you do. You can have hybrid vampires, yeah, but it depends on the person too. Just how exactly they're willing to go for that. Some people they don't feel comfortable with blood, and it just depends.
Jim Mike McFarland says anyone that drinks human blood isn't a vampire. They're
Uh,
individual,
and
have a screw loose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a thing that's gone back probably thousands of years ago. I mean, you've had ancient people drink other people's blood, so this is nothing new.
Kristen Anvik is asking, how do I protect myself from psychic vampires?
So the thing with psychic vampires is usually when you are
well,
around a
that's easy.
particular individual. you feel drained.
Well,
So if you're feeling
you
drained,
have two.
go ahead.
Yeah, his video keeps buffering. He's got a poor connection.
So from my personal experience with, you have to set boundaries with psychic vampires. Psychic vampires tend to feed off people, and when you often are in their presence, a lot of people don't even know they're dealing with one until they constantly visit this person and they feel like a battery that's been almost completely drained. This person needs to engage in a lot of sexual activity, a lot of chaos,
Yes,
energy, places of high energy. But sometimes you have to set boundaries with them, because they will try to come
energy
into
is
your life as well. So you got to be careful.
Unfortunately, hello one, we're struggling to pick up your feed.
Yeah, your signal isn't all that great. We hear a couple of words and then you freeze up. So
Unless you come out and come back in again.
yeah, you can try coming back out and then clicking on the link again and come back in and see if it resets.
Yeah, try to do that, Brenus.
See, now it's a case where when he's freezing up, he may not be hearing us either. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sharing, but before we go any further, I'd like to put a shout out to thank you for joining the Esoteric Hours. Daisy Lynn Eaton, Steve Trips Parr, Jim McFarlane and Christy. Thank you for joining us. And while we're waiting, what drew you to becoming interested in the Fae, Tiffany?
I had a lot of paranormal experiences as a child, and I would always see bright orbs and other things. And as a child, I would read a lot of fairy tale books, and the things that I was seeing and the things I was experiencing, it opened my mind to potentially that this is a legitimate thing. Um, there's just so much um, information from ancient times up until now that there's a possibility that there is fairies, vampires, other things that most people will consider as mythology, but the way that history is revealing itself over time, the last couple of years, and including a lot of paranormal research, it's becoming very crystal clear these things are a legitimate possibility.
Terry Sedlock is saying, Tiffany, do you know that psychic? She's usually on the paranormal show. Her name is Michelle something. I can't remember her last name, but she was a psychic vampire. And I was watching all kinds of things about it the other night.
No, I know that some. I'm not saying all psychic vampires are bad. There are good and there are bad. You have good ones that like to help the
the
public.
cat, the puppy, the vampire stuff.
Yeah.
Beck Birdie is saying, typical blood ritual since you were a kid. If you ever fell over, hurt yourself, especially the hands, you put it in your mouth till you got a Band-Aid. We have all tasted our own blood.
Yeah. Yeah. But some people.
I have. Sorry.
Go ahead, Bradley.
Not all vampires are bad. I can validate that from my own encounters with vampires in a spiritual realm. I have encountered, and they're not all bad. Some are bad, admittedly, but not all. There's good and bad in all species, mostly, except for the archons. I had never heard of good archons. But
So have you met?
Yeah.
Have you met both the good and have you met both the good and the bad?
I haven't met. Well, yeah, I have. Yeah, I had. I reckon it was a vampire. It took me from behind to try to crush the living daylights out of me, and that happened 3 times. It tried and didn't succeed. I know the story sounds bizarre, but I've been attacked by many varieties of demonic entities, and I reckon a vampire was one of them. They tried when you say vampires, you think of teeth going into the flesh, don't you? But have you ever considered the fact that
Yeah.
they actually try to drain your entity? I mean, drain your energy. They drain your lush. You know?
Yeah, and then around the world, you have different classification of vampires. Each vampire in each country, they have over at least, we're talking about 100,000 varieties. So just to assume that they all use the teeth and they look like something out of Anna Rice's novel or something, um, they don't all look the same. You have very terrifying ones in Africa where they can shapeshift into bumblebees and get into people's homes and cause miscarriages and unfortunate deaths. Some of the descriptions in Vietnam, they can literally make their upper half of their body literally disfigure themselves and literally come after people. They have bat wings. Like there's so many different versions. It's just not your Twilight or the ones that you were probably given by Hollywood. There's so many ancient descriptions, and some of them are more terrifying. The more that I read about them, it's like, wow, yeah, no, I know.
Vic Makarov is asking, is it true in old times they were known as Palmyra?
Yeah, you had different kinds of vampires in each different continent, so they were probably known by various different names. You have the Strogi, you have the Bilopras, you have the Sang. They have so many different names for them.
Lisa A. was saying, I've had so many psychic vampire attacks in my life that I can't even tell you how many. I know how to protect myself from that mess.
Yeah.
So that's a good
Yeah.
question, Tiffany. How does one protect themselves from their energy being drained from a psychic
An
vampire?
energy vampire. Okay, so the first thing you have to understand with an energy vampire, they're walking black hole, a void is what I call them. They literally, if you do not protect yourself, they can actually cause a person to actually pass away and things around them to pass away because they're taking their life force and everything. The first thing, though, before is recognizing the vampire, the energy vampire in your life. Make sure it's not, maybe your everyday stress or etc. If it's a particular person and there always seems to be high intensity, you don't feel good, um, you should probably start setting boundaries and trying to remove yourself from that person as immediately as possible before you get into chronic health and, of course, the fatality. You don't want to go that far. But yeah, first is trying to figure out who is the energy vampire first and what is the best appropriate way to set boundaries with you and that person. And if you need to, definitely cut off that person because it could become very fatal if you don't.
I bought a goblet glass, a crystal glass, and it had fairies attached to it. The fairy, there was a gatekeeper that was a fairy, and she chose fairies to come through that would affiliate with my psyche, my persona. And I actually I went into the bedroom, and when I came and walked into the lounge, on the table was the glass goblet, the crystal goblet, and I saw beside it a gigantic orangey red orb. And this was indicating to me that the glass was activated and ready to roll. What do you think about that, Jim?
So did it have any effect on you? Or you just
No, it was just a sign, a presentation.
Yeah.
Hello,
so,
one. I'm really apologise for the feed that you're getting. It's not our end. What's happening is we cannot hear you hardly. You freezing up. You need to go back and come back in again. I'm sorry. Maybe we could have you on another time.
Yeah,
It's really sorry. We
I
have
don't,
video chat.
I don't think that maybe he can hear us as well either. So
Disappointed about your friend Tiffany. We have to video chat him and have a chat with him anyway. He sounds worth talking to. Hello, one.
Yeah.
Yes. Well done, Tiffany, for inviting him to the show. Maybe we could talk to him privately in a private group chat. If you could arrange that, Tiffany.
well, we can have him on another show anyway, but we'll try to straighten out his his signal first. Well, he's trying
Thanks
to
for
come
the
back
effort,
in now.
Tiffany. Yeah.
Trying to come back in now. Let's see if we can get him on.
Thank you for your effort, Tiffany, trying to bring a guest onto the show.
I don't think he's
I'll
going to
still
be
share
able.
it
I
to
don't think
those
he's going to.
groups.
I don't think he's going to be able to come in. He's buffering again.
Yeah, it might be the phone.
Yes, so Tiffany, you're well familiar with the Fae and vampires. Any stories you'd like to share?
Actually, when I was living with my grandfather, he told a lot of strange stories regarding the graveyard that we lived on. Um, and as I was saying earlier, there's a lot of uh, hidden things left in the world that is like skeletal remains of history where vampires was a real thing. Um, but with my grandfather, going back to my grandfather, in West Virginia, there is a lot of sightings of creatures with glowing eyes, and they tend to haunt the graveyards and cemeteries near the mountains. And there's a lot of different stories with when you're regarding Appalachian folklore and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
I often wondered why vampires would be in a cemetery at night when all there is formaldehyde and no blood.
Well,
In a
a lot of
cemetery is
times,
energy.
yeah,
Yeah, well, how are you
it's
going to get energy from the dead? And there's no blood there. It's formaldehyde.
well, that's where we talk into the vampire and the fae. So for a lot of people, they're familiar with vampires or sucking blood and everything. Now, when we're going back to the medieval times, a lot of the people knew the fairies as the Seelie court or the unseelie court. And this is where you get your masquerade balls, your king and queens, your lord and lady vampires, and your fairies and etc. The Seelie court are those that have a loving compassion towards humans, and then you have the unseelie court, those that don't take very kindly to humans. And fairies tend to be guardians of the underworld. So where you have the dead, where you have cemeteries, where you have graveyards, places where there's a lot of death, you're gonna find these unseelie creatures, known as vampires and other things that goes on for the night. That's what a lot of people don't understand about it. It goes so much deeper than that.
I have here attached. This is a black onyx, and this here is attached like about 1,500 spiritual entities are attached to this vessel, believe it or not, bound by a sorcerer from America. And this here, I don't know if you can see, it's got the Fae, plenty of the Fae willingly attach themselves to this vessel. And I haven't actually used it yet, but they willingly attach themselves. And I have a list of elves, moon fairies, star fairy, vampires, unicorns, pixies, all attach themselves to this vessel for me. How about that?
And what does that do for you exactly? How do you
Well,
benefit? How do you benefit from that?
yeah, if I wear it regularly, it will actually enhance my life in a variety of ways, and can cause people can not all your faults are your own, and sometimes you may say things without thinking. You know, it can cause people to do things, perform tasks on your behalf that you would desire them to do. Believe it or not.
Yes, Sadie
Um,
Harris Greaves. We can see your comments.
And back to the forum. Sending Link said this is an awesome show. He's totally enjoying it. Beck Birdie says yes. Hollywood made the modern vampire, which is way off. Stephen Parr says I believe in vampires, but not Dracula. And Jim McFarlane says bottom line is if a living person has a taste for human blood, they're not supernatural like movies want you to believe. They are mentally sick. I agree with that. However, you have to bear in mind we're actually talking about spiritual entities, which are vampires, which do exist.
Yeah.
But if you never met one, you probably would struggle to believe that.
And you have
Steve
to
Parr
also
says,
see.
sorry,
I'm sorry.
Tiffany?
Yeah,
Steve
The
Bradley.
reason
Parr.
why they
Bradley.
go after the blood is because blood is a life sustainer. Life has energy itself. That's what people don't understand. It's a
Bradley, you don't
life
watch the
sustainer.
video. I've got a comment up there if you want to read it. Why don't you read what I highlight?
I am. I was just doing the forum actually because we were
Well,
getting behind on it.
this is part of the forum.
Yeah. The forum I'm reading is not the same as your one, Jim.
Oh,
That's
all
why I
right.
was reading
All
from
right.
it.
All right. Go ahead.
Terry Sedlock says, I saw on TV that a woman loved vampirism so bad that she loved the taste of blood. And she went to go have her blood tested, and all her white and red count cells came out normal. But this person lets her friend get cut so she can drink their blood off their chests, done with a razor blade. So it's just a personal preference as her.
Yeah.
Wow, that's hardcore.
And a lot of the people that they refer to themselves as EDs for the vampires, when these people are drinking their blood, your brain releases hormones to like a pleasure. That's why some people get addicted to it. That's what people don't understand about that part.
Yeah, what it is, Jim, I'm reading off a different forum here. It's not showing what your same message.
Vic Makaroff is asking, do some negative aliens work as energy vampires sucking your aura?
Yeah, I can answer that. The Archons are very familiar for doing this. The Archons are the first entities that come to mind.
And in cemeteries and crypts and stuff, you actually have actual crypts of vampires, and there are distinguishable things. A lot of people will tend to leave offerings for them. The crypt will be locked and sealed, and you will also have those that tend to be descendants of vampires. You'll notice that a lot of their graves may have certain symbols or burn marks. And when we're talking about early beliefs of vampires, they would behead people. They would actually put bricks in their actual mouth. So when archaeologists are digging up graves, we're talking about people, actual archaeologists that study vampires. They will always see that the skeletal remains um, they have a stake through the heart. The head is decapitated, so the skull is farthest away from the body. You also have many butcherings of the body, so there will be a lot of scratches in the bones. You'll see the brick in between their teeth and have their teeth crushed because they believe that if they stick the brick in there, it would break the vampire's teeth off. So um, that's another aspect that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to vampires is there was many people thought this way around the world, so there has to be some truth in it as to why there's so many graves like this.
Marianne Clark says, this is for you, Bradley. Make sure you do your research on receiving vessels.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marianne. That's a very good advice.
Jonathan Kipp says, are there any nature-based fairies? I often sense things around out back at night. I sky gaze and I hear like high-pitched noises.
Yes, there are nature-based fairies. Fairies tend to live in the wild, in the nature. That's why a lot of people used to refer to them as elementals. They are in pretty much everything, you name it. They need nature. Without nature, they will cease to exist.
Terry Sedlock says, I heard that when they buried their dead in Transylvania or Romania, they would put garlic cloves in the dead's mouth to prevent vampirism. But I don't understand what a vampire can get out of a dead corpse.
Well, it's not, well, I'm sure you heard in Hollywood about being, if you get bit by a vampire, you turn into a vampire. In the old beliefs, when we're talking about vampires, it wasn't always just being bit. It was if you were born on a day of the saint, it was considered blasphemous. You were automatic, you could be a vampire. If you didn't have the proper burial rites, you were wrongfully given an improper burial or you were disrespected during the whole process, you could come back as a vampire. This is why in mortuary science, you will see that a lot of the graves, uh, people have the cages on them because the fear is if they bury that person wrong, that person could come back as a vampire and haunt them.
All right,
That's where
so
that
if I can see a person coming back as a vampire,
as
but
vengeful. Yeah, they can come
right,
back as
but
vengeful.
what I don't understand is why you would have to put garlic in another person's mouth who is not a vampire to protect them from a vampire. Because what does that vampire? What can that vampire get out of someone who's not a vampire that's a dead corpse? What does he gain from that?
So in that case, we do have cases like in Romania where the superstition, you have very superstitious beliefs. They refer to their vampires as the strogi. So in the strogi belief, the garlic repels the vampires. They don't like it. The smell is very
Well, I
overpowering and
understand. I
enduring.
understand that for the living.
When
I
we're
can
talking,
understand. I can understand the living protecting themselves from a vampire. But why would you have to put garlic in a dead corpse's
yeah,
mouth? That's my question.
so that the person will not come back. The person will not come back as a vampire, especially if that person was murdered or if they had a superstitious birthday. Um, it goes into more factors than just the garlic. You also have a
Sorry,
lot of people.
carry
You
on,
also have a
Tiffany.
lot of people that have many various reports throughout history where their loved ones had passed away. They did have a funeral, they did have a wake for the body, they did bury the body, and then there were reports of that same person coming into villages and terrorizing the people. So, yes, it's a reality. And there was also another belief that vampire spirits can come into the dead bodies of the deceased. So that's where you get that from, Jim.
Chris Joan Marie says, I've encountered many vampires and it takes time to recognize them.
Thank you for that,
So,
Christian
so
Marie. A validation from the forum that Chris has encountered many vampires.
So that leads to the question. It's a good question. How do you identify a vampire, Tiffany?
So vampires have different various traits. A vampire is someone that has a very pale complexion. And I'm not talking about, that they're going to melt in the sun or anything. No, they're very much paler. than most normal human beings. Number two, they are prone to a lot of health conditions. They can't stay out in the sun very long. Um, Number three, their eyes are very sensitive to the heat, so they tend to wear sunglasses. They prefer when they're indoors, they have to have the lights pretty much off, candles. Um, and another thing was the red hair. So in the Crusades, the medieval times, the Catholic Church was afraid of people with red hair. And the reason is that people with red hair were thought to be vampires. And if they died and they had the red hair, they'd come back as a vampire terrorizing people. That was
Yeah, and
another
Chris
thing.
John Marie says you feel tired and withered after being around one. Some people don't realize they are one.
Yeah.
And Vic Makarov is asking, do they smell like sulfur?
No. Demons smell like sulfur, not vampires.
That's debatable as well, actually, about demons smelling like sulfur. Some do, some don't. That's what I've encountered.
Marianne Clark says they are gray in color.
Yeah. And some people have described them as very beautiful, but also like a very porcelain-like. If you can think of like a porcelain doll,
Or a
very
mannequin. Or a
defined
mannequin.
features. Yeah, almost like a mannequin, and people think like, that, is this a person? Is this an actual person, or is this like a doll? Yeah, that's kind
I
of
have
the
seen,
features
I
are
saw a
very defined.
vampire and
And
it
they
was
may
very youthful.
actually,
Very youthful.
yeah,
It was a
they tend to,
young man, a very youthful looking skin, very baby faced, actually, I must say, on
Vic
one
Makarov
occasion.
is asking, are
are
they
they immortal?
immortal? Yeah.
Their souls are immortal, but they can
Yeah.
still die just like any other person. Their souls are immortal, though.
Well,
The souls are immortal. Yeah.
isn't it true that all souls are immortal?
Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And also, one must bear in mind that vampires are incubuses and succubuses as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us on Esoteric Hours. We're discussing the Fae and vampires. And we seem to be discussing vampires quite a lot, which is still very interesting. Yeah, and for some of you, you might have experienced vampires, and some of you might struggling to believe they even exist. I can understand that. And you have encountered them as well, Tiffany. I have myself.
Yes, I've had experiences myself. Yeah.
Now,
Um,
now, in your opinion, Tiffany, what percentage of the population would you say are vampires?
Ooh,
Maybe at least 15%.
15%. Yeah.
You have more
So
human.
how do they go from, if they're normal at one time, say that, are they born vampires, or are they normal at birth and become vampires? How does that work?
So some people, they actually come from bloodlines of vampires, just like with Dracula, and
So in other words, that's
maybe
just like a genetic
it could be genetic.
continuation.
And then also, like I mentioned before, people being born on the Day of the Saints in the Catholics' view of the Vatican, that was, if you're a vampire, because that was
So
blasphemy.
so if
You
an
having red
individual
hair.
so if an individual happens to be born genetically a vampire, at what age do they start becoming to realize what they really are?
Well, just like we're having an awakening on Earth, you probably hear people who say the Great Awakening and stuff. Vampires start to become aware about more in their early teens, later teens. They start to realize that they're very different. They always felt like an outcast. They will try to blend in with humans the best way possible, but there's always something about them that sets them different.
So is that something that they're connected to eternally through genetics? Every time
Yeah.
they recycle, or there's no way of getting out of it or changing.
Yeah.
So there's no way of changing. No.
Christian Marie says, you feel tired and withered after being around one, and some people don't even realize they are one.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
read that question a little while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that relates to this.
And another characteristic of vampires is they may have actually like pointed ears. So that's another thing. Like they have the very pale skin, grayish skin, porcelain doll features. They look like a mannequin to some people. They have like maybe pointed ears, kind of, or their ears tend to are pointed at the top. They may have natural canines, but their teeth in the back tend to become more sharp and dagger-like. Uh, they also complain of a lot of tooth problems. They may not even like going to the dentist. That's another
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Tiffany, I don't know if you want to reveal this, but didn't you mention something to me about your own teeth personally one time?
Yeah, so with my teeth, I have two canine teeth up here, two canine teeth at the bottom, and then towards the back, they're all very dagger-like. And my family has a lot of strange things that happen with them, and they all tend to live by cemeteries and graveyards, and they would refer to my family as crypt keepers of some sort.
Now, are you? Do you have vampire genetics within yourself? Do you think?
Probably so. A lot of people tend to think I'm a porcelain doll. That's why from my own
Um,
personal experience.
now, are you aware whether you actually are or are not a vampire?
Yeah, I started to realize that a long time ago. Very different. No matter how hard I try to blend in with my medical history and everything, yeah, there's a lot of things that made it clear. There's something else
Now, that
going
would
on.
lead to the next question, which would be: are you a psychic vampire or a blood drinking vampire, or both?
I think I'm more of a psychic vampire, but I use my abilities for the good of humanity.
Okay, so that was going to be my main question. If
Yeah,
someone realizes they're a vampire, do they have
you
freedom of
can.
choice as to how to?
You just like a human does, freedom of will. If you're going
Right.
to be a good or a
So
bad
not
person.
all vampires are bad.
No,
No. Yeah, I agree with that. No vampires are bad.
but the blood thing, I pass out from blood. No, thank you. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Fae are real as well. Fairies, yeah, elves, sprites, pixies, they all do exist in another realm, but they do cross over into this realm at random. They can commune with us humans, certain ones. They recognise that too.
Yeah,
Terry Sedlog is saying, yeah,
Michelle.
Tiffany, that psychic vampire's name is Michelle Bellinger. Bellinger.
I will definitely look into that. That's interesting. Yeah, and then you have some cities. I think it was Austin, Texas, New York City, California, and other places that you have a lot of these vampire meet and greets if you're into the saying vampires. But if they're not into that, then you don't have to. But yeah, they're starting to become more notorious around the United States. And the United States itself, the Native Americans did talk about vampires, vampire myths. So every country has its own unique perspective
Yeah,
on it.
yeah. Transylvania being the main source
Yeah,
seems to
and
be.
I remember in Chinese mythology, they did speak about a vampire. He actually did help humans with farming in the early ancient times when the empires were just beginning. He helped them set up their crops and everything. And one of the ladies, she accidentally pricked herself. She had an accident with the blood, and he attacked her because of the blood. But like I said, that depends on the vampire. You know, he was helping humans, but it's free will.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Sadie Paris Greaves, Daisy Nuneaton, Terry Sedlock, they're all in the house, Steve Parr, Chris Joan Marie. It's a pleasure, Jonathan Kipp, Vic Makaroff. It's a pleasure to have you all near us. Thank you for joining us. This is a very intriguing subject about vampires and the Fae. We seem to be focusing on the vampires mostly because it's astonishing that they actually do exist. Yet some people that have actually validated that in the forum, and like me and Tiffany, have also encountered them at random.
Chris Joan Marie says, I am an empath. It took years for me to realize my gifts, but I can tell when something or someone is draining me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you will. And with vampires, they tend to be solitary. They always tend to be like in solitary confinement. They tend to be loners um, themselves because a lot of them, that's just them. Um, but when we're talking about vampires in public, they might be somebody that tends to isolate themselves a lot as well, due to them being able to pick up on people's energies, their feelings, and etc. That can actually also drain out a vampire as well, if people don't know that.
So are vampires meant to be vampires, or does that some quirky way just happen? How does that occur? Like being from a regular human to becoming a vampire. How does that work?
So there's a lot of different ways in different countries that explain how people can become vampires. For example, you have the Vilacros that are known in Greece and Rome to this day. How somebody becomes a Vilacra is really interesting. So what they say is when a person dies, um, they tend to knock at your door. So if you're the next of kin that is a living person and you get this knock at your door at 3 o'clock in the morning and this person is calling your name, for whatever reason, you open this door to that person or that entity that just passed away, they can come in and that person can die a few weeks later and become a Vilacra, a vampire themselves. So it's really interesting how different countries have different bizarre ways of becoming a vampire. It's more than just a bite, actually. And another one was improper burial. If the person felt like they were wronged in how they're properly buried or how they were mistreated, you're going to come back as a vengeful spirit, a vampire spirit.
Well, what would happen in a case of cremation? Would that be considered a proper burial? A matter of fact, if they fear somebody is a vampire, why don't they just cremate them instead of burying them with garlic in their mouth?
Yeah, you do still have some countries that are still like Romania and Transylvania. They still will do that. Um, but I mean, I think well, in the terms of modern society, I think we're more modern today. But I know back then, the burial system and everything was pretty savage. Was probably very
Well,
savage.
yeah, but I
And
mean, why go to the extent of putting a cage around the body or garlic in the mouth when they could just cremate the body?
yeah, so that's an interesting question. But I think over time, as we progressed as a society, that was considered another ideal, because back then you had a lot of people that were superstitious. So um, with the vampire sightings, I I can name so many sightings. For one thing, if they suspected that somebody was a vampire, in those times you didn't have modern mortuary medicine, so a lot of the people when they passed away, bodies can actually still grow long nails, so that was another indication they thought that somebody was a vampire. A person can still have fluid which could show up as red blood on their gown. Somebody could think that person is a vampire. With the way that they handle burials today, we don't see people hacking people up thinking they're
Well,
vampires.
I heard that the growing of the nails in the hair is actually a myth because what happens is the body starts shrinking, which gives it
Yeah.
the illusion that the nails are getting longer.
And you had many cases back then where people were taken out of their grave and had horrible things done to them by villages and people that were vampire hunters because that person was just doing the process of what their body does best, ashes to ashes. But you have people that were very crazy.
Vic Makarov is asking, would the soul still live if you cremate the body?
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And you still have some countries that they still believe a vampire soul can inhabit and possess the body, even if the body's destroyed.
Terry Sedlock says, exactly, Jim. You have to set it before you die.
Yeah, Terry also says, yeah, that's another thing. I was staying up and saw about how the nails grow because the skin recedes as the body receded as the body is decomposing, and the nails start to look really long. Yeah,
Yeah. Because you had a lot of people back then, I think they were more terrified, very superstitious. We still have a lot of tales and myths today of other things that go bump in the night. But as we progressed today, we're more modern. We understand things better. And like I said, we're not having vampire raids on towns and cities anymore, thank God.
Yes, Sean Gee says nails in hair do not grow after death. It's the body shrinking due to decomposing.
Yeah.
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 Steve Parr says vampires do not die; they continue in the next life.
Yeah. And I think that's
Well, we're
why a lot
coming.
of people have the conspiracy theories about the immortal vampires thing.
Yeah, there
Well,
is.
how about all the poor individuals hundreds of years ago that were burnt at the stake for witchery?
Yeah, but
I mean, you were under the impression back then of something that really wasn't as intense as it seemed, but yet all them poor souls were sacrificed because of
Yeah.
something we're talking, basically similar to what we're talking about now.
Yeah, I mean,
So if
you
you
could,
think somebody is a vampire or somebody is draining your energy, you can have some other nut out there with a silver bullet ready to kill the vampire. Right?
yeah, and you had in the Crusades, uh, with the Vatican, they would send out people to actually kill and round up, what was it, the Jewish, the Basque people, people with red hair, um, certain traits that they considered somebody to be a vampire. So you had a lot of people that were killed, innocent, probably hundreds and thousands of people
yeah,
killed because of
So
vampire raids.
my question is, how come it's not like that today?
I think we progressed as a society, and it's probably better that way because we don't do crazy stuff like that. And if we did, that would be alarming. That would be alarming.
No, but we're still talking about the crazy stuff that initiated what they did do back then. Is my point.
Yeah.
30,000 wishes were actually perished during the in England
Spanish
alone. 30,000.
Inquisition. Yeah.
Sean Gee says on the human race's biggest, one of the human race's biggest downfall is ignorance, and I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Humanity's biggest downfall is the ego.
Yeah. Pride and ego. And not being able to say sorry.
Yeah.
And also not being able to forgive is a problem.
Yeah. Not being able to
Yeah.
let it be bygone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bygone, be
Agreed.
bygone.
Chris Joan
Well,
Marie
thank you.
says, amen.
We are coming to the end of the show now. Thank you for coming on and sharing so much information, Tiffany. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah,
It's
thank
always,
you.
you're always
Very
welcome.
informative.
Yeah. You're always welcome on the show, Tiffany. Yeah. So that's basically our introductory to vampires from with the help of Tiffany Reynolds, who's very affiliated with vampires and the Fae. And add her as a friend. Please like, subscribe, and share this show if you can. And also, you're welcome to add Tiffany Reynolds as a friend and ask her more questions if you feel you wish to. She's very affiliated and wise and all-knowing to quite on a vast scale of diversity and esoteric intellect. And this is my co-host, Jim Andre. Pleasure to have you on board.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Yeah.
And we'll see you all on the other side.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.